in any better way. Leticia Klausner, as we like to say, a friend, someone who is trying her best, and her family as well, to become better citizens of the universe, right? And tonight, she will be speaking to us about the Spiritist view of pregnancy. If I can get to this, change this. In a more formal way, Leticia Klausner is an international medical graduate. She received her medical degree from University Federal Fluminense, Brazil. Leticia is one of the founding members of the U.S. Spiritist Medical Association and currently its program director. And she studies Spiritism. She helps in many, many occasions. We have had the opportunity to work together, and it's an amazing person. She'll keep you straight. So don't fall asleep. No, just kidding. Leticia, please. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here to share with you this study on the Spiritist view of pregnancy. So I based this study in 3 books mainly. The first one is not yet in English, to my awareness. It's called Gestação, Encontro entre Almas, which I will translate freely, Gestation, When Souls Meet. It's by Cristiane Assis. She is a Spiritist physician, an obstetrician in Brazil, and part of the Spiritist Medical Association of Minas Gerais. So I based that frame of thought from her book. Then we brought some teachings from the Spiritist book, because if we could synthesize in the minimum what is pregnancy, it's the means to reincarnation for a spirit to come back to live on earth. So reincarnation is one of the pillars of Spiritism. So of course, in the codification, we will find teachings about it. So I based on the Spirit's book. And then the book Missionaries of the Light, through the medium Chico Xavier, by the Spirit André Luiz. There is a case described in the book, starting in chapter 12, which is a case of a reincarnation that they brought to us because they say it's a pretty average case. So it's a case, an example of reincarnation that most people will have undergone. Of course, all reincarnations are different. It doesn't mean that every reincarnation process happened the way it happened to this spirit. But because he was an average spirit, like most of us, his reincarnation was average. It is something that we can take as a reference. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is that we are bringing the Spiritist view, but we are not denying the physical aspect of it, right? So it's like an integration of both views, the physical and the spiritual. I'm not going to go through all the physical aspects because that was a 3-year post-graduation course. Thank you. But there you go. But we're not denying that. So that's a foundation, all the physical aspects, and we accept them. And then we're just going to build upon it with the spiritual aspects. So let's have a look on a comparison between the physical aspects and the spiritual aspects. So if we think about the physical aspects, it starts with preconception care. So before a baby is conceived, we can think about a healthy diet, supplementation of vitamins, exercise, and for both mother and father, when they're really planning ahead on that pregnancy. Then we have conception, where the male cells meet with the female cell. Gestation, the fetus develops in the womb until it gets ready and it's time for birth. So it's very simplified, but we can see the steps that happen in the physical aspect. Then in the spiritual aspects, what the Spiritist teachings bring to us that is different. So in preconception care, we have the reincarnation planning. So sometimes even before the mother and father are thinking about taking the preconception care and the physical aspects. In the spiritual plan, the reincarnating spirit can already be planning the future life. Then it comes the connection with the future parents. So that spirit will need to connect with the future parents. And then there is a connection, a peri-spiritual connection with the mother. So all that before conception. Then there is conception, but the conception happens under spiritual guidance. It's something that earth medicine doesn't take into consideration. And then the gestation period also happens under spiritual guidance. And then there is birth, and then the continuation of the reincarnation until 7 years of age of the child. So we can see how the Spiritist view adds a lot of complexity to the physical aspects of the pregnancy. So we're going to go in a little bit more depth in each one of those topics, but I'm not going to go all the way because it's a lot of information and we would stay here until tomorrow, right? And then you guys have some homework. I gave you all the material to study on if you are interested. So the reincarnation planning, and I always like to bring the Spirit's teachings from the codification to see, okay, what does Allan Kardec got from the Spirits about the reincarnation planning? So he asked, do spirits foresee the time of their next incarnation? And the Spirits answer, they have a feeling about it. They have a presentiment about it. Because the question is generalized, right? So do spirits, and we know that the spirits are different. We're all different in different levels of development. So it will depend on the level of development of that spirit. So in general, the spirits know that will happen, but they don't know exactly when it will happen. So then Kardec goes deeper, and he wants to know, when does this connection happen, right? So is the union of a given soul with a given body predetermined, or is the body chosen at the last moment? So like when the cells are there present, that's when it happen? No, it says each spirit selects its own trials and requests to be reincarnated, and the spirit is assigned beforehand to a given body. So it doesn't happen in the last minute. So let's see now from our friend Andrea Lewis that brought to us a little bit more in-depth explanation from the book Missionaries of the Light. So we know Andrea Lewis was, while he was living on Earth, he was a physician. And once he discarnated, he was very interested in this new medicine that he was seeing in the spiritual world, the new physiology and mechanisms of development and all that. So he was invited to go to the reincarnation planning pavilion to follow this process of reincarnation for our friend that we're going to be looking more in depth. So the reincarnation planning pavilion was a very big pavilion, several buildings, a lot of people coming and going. And then in there, the first thing he learns is, why do we reincarnate? So he learned that we reincarnate because we need the struggles in our physical life that will correct, renew, restore, and perfect us. So if we ever wonder, why are we here in this life? What's our purpose? It's very simple. You just need to do those little 4 things: correct, renew, restore, and perfect ourselves. And we are not alone in that journey. It looks like a lot of work, but we are not alone. And we're going to see the dedication of so many friends that are there to help us along the way. So he will continue following with his friends there, and he comes to this other part where there's many specialized spiritual workers that are at the design and planning pavilion. And in this place, they plan the physical body up to the genetic level. So you can see they have the charts and the models of the organs of the body. and everything. It's a very complex work, and you think about, well, it's just the spiritual plane. Why are they so worried about the physical aspects of our reincarnation? Well, because they need to make sure that our physical body is going to give us the tools that we need in order to undergo our tasks on Earth to improve ourselves. So in this physical body, even our physical limitations are planned. So our physical limitations don't happen by chance. They are there for a reason. And they explain the reason. They are there to guard us against temptations of a lower nature. So we know of a very good example that Chico Xavier has told of a mother that had a child that had lots of physical limitations. I believe it was like blind and deaf. And then it developed a disease that was going to need both legs amputated. And she was really, really distraught. And she was like, oh, Chico, my child already has so many handicaps. Why now this new challenge, right? And then Chico was allowed by the good spirits to tell her, you know what happened? Your child has been committing suicide many incarnations. And in this incarnation, it came with the limitations in order to prevent from committing suicide again. But even with the limitations, the child was thinking about going towards a body of water, walking into it, and drowning. So in that plan, in that reincarnatory plan, there was the predisposition to develop a disease that would affect the legs if it was needed. So that's the other very interesting aspect. So it's not because they plan us down to the genetic level that we are like doomed to have this or that happen in our lives. No, it's a predisposition that's going to be activated if it's needed for our reincarnation. And we know that in science there is genetic modulation. So not because our genes are present that they're going to be expressed. They can be expressed or they can be suppressed depending on our lifestyle, if we smoke, if we drink, the food that we eat, and even our emotional state. So this example show that. So in that example that Chico told us, it was guarding him against committing suicide. But they also said that the physical limitations can be an antidote to vanity, acting against self-centeredness, against pride, right? So then he continues there. There was hundreds of technicians, so it's very serious work. And those technicians, they were not only like experts in the spiritual aspects. They were experts in embryology and biology. So everything goes together with the science that we know on Earth. It doesn't go against it or doesn't happen in a miraculous way. They need to be able to know the embryology and the biology in order to make that plan according to what we know here on Earth, the laws that guide our planet, right? And then in that pavilion, there was spirits that they were planning on their reincarnation, and they had like the little charts with them, and they were bringing for the workers there to review it, to make sure that they were going to have what they needed for their incarnation to undergo the growth that they needed. And then, since we saw that about the planning, we know that the human existence is not an accident. So what we are going through, either physically or in our life, is not an accident. It happens according to divine justice. Because according to divine justice, to each one is given according to his own deeds. So they had those charts, and Andrea Luiz was very curious because people walked around with little scrolls and rolled up, and then it was charts of organic forms that were prepared by those specialists, and they were adequate for meeting the reincarnating spirit's essential goals. That's what I said before, depending on the work that they will be assigned in that physical body, while in the physical body. So let's see if the teachings from the Spirit's book are in accordance with what André Luiz brought to us, right? So Kardec asked the spirits, is the spirit allowed to choose the body it will enter, or does it only choose the kind of life that will provide its trial? So by what we saw in André Luiz, we would say that it may choose the body too, right? And again, André Luiz is bringing to us one specific case, and then when Kardec asks, is a general question. So that's why they say it may choose a body too, since the imperfections of a body are also trials. And the choice doesn't always depend on the spirit, but is often allowed. And if it's going to be allowed or not allowed will depend on the level of evolution of the spirit. So, because a spirit needs to be mature enough to be able to choose wisely the trials that's going to undergo. So, for example, let's think here on Earth. You have a 2-year-old child. You would not going to give a knife to a 2-year-old child to help you cook your dinner and cut the potatoes, for example. But you might give it to a 10-year-old child. So it's the same. So we are children of God, and the spirits guide us in accordance to what we are able to decide for ourselves. That's going to be a wise decision. All right, so that's the reincarnation planning part. Then now, next we go to the connection with the future parents. Let's see what is on the Spirit's book about that. It's in a chapter called Family Relationships. So do our family ties extend beyond our present lives? Because if you're going to have a connection with your parents, how are you going to know them if you never knew them before? How are you going to connect with people that you never knew before, right? So to establish this connection, does this tie was present before our life? And they answer, they must, right? The succession of incarnations establish a relationship among spirits that dates from previous lives. So it's like a bond between those spirits that have been coming together, living on Earth. And then Kardec was questioning, because if we know science, it says the physical body comes from the physical body, that we can understand, for example, physical traits that are similar, right? But then he was thinking about, how about psychological traits? How come sometimes children are similar to their parents in this other aspect? Does he get a piece of their parents' soul? He was questioning. And the Spirit says, no, because they're different souls. The Spirit doesn't proceed from any spirit, so it was already an independent spirit created. But then Kardec asked, what causes this similarity between parents and children? And the spirits say, spirits who share the same attitudes and tendencies are drawn to each other. So it's like our friends here on Earth. We hang out with people that like doing things that we like and going to places that we like, and that's why we are similar. Doesn't mean that we are a part of each other. It's the same with spirits. So let's see in our example of our friend, how did it happen? I'm not going to go in details. If you want to know the whole story about this reincarnation case, it starts on chapter 12 of the book Missionaries of the Light. But I know the picture is very small. But let's start with, like, in the back there, we can see there's a family. There's a woman, a man, and a child. And then here we have the spirits. Sitting on the couch, there's a spirit that is not looking very excited, right? He has like his head's down. He doesn't look very excited. And then we have the other friend spirits, the mentor spirits that are there to help. I don't think we can see in the picture, but the family sitting there, they look at least very serious, quiet, and reserved, the three of them there. They are not very excited. So then the spirits approach. Because this family situation was happening, because there was some resistance on the father to the approach of this spirit that wanted to reincarnate. And that's why that spirit's not looking very excited. And that's why the good spirits needed to go there and try to change that. So one of the good spirits decides to use the child to touch the father's heart, so they would have an opening to do their work, to approach those spirits together. And then the father, you can see he got emotional, and so there was some progress in their work. Now he was more available to receive their good influence, right? So before going to bed, they pray. We can see the good spirits are there. They have all those friends that are coming to try to establish this connection between the reincarnating spirit with the parents. And in this case, the difficulty was with the father. So when they go to sleep, that they are able to expand from their body, the good spirits meet with the mom, and they're going to meet with the dad. This spirit intervenes with the future father in order for him to be able to see the reincarnating spirit in a different light and to resolve some issues that they had between them. And then they're successful. We can see that they are getting closer together, with him kissing his hand. And then we can see some semi-material substance that's broken up from the father's perispirit. So that was actually what was preventing this connection from happening. So that's the spiritual connection. But we might ask, all right, we have there in the beginning the family sitting together. Let's forget about the spiritual part. Let's just think about the physical part. It's a husband and a wife together. If she is healthy, her female cells are healthy, and his male cells are healthy. And if they're being intimate, why, without the help from these spirits, a child couldn't come about? Well, the spirits explain to us. They say because of his negative thinking pattern, it was affecting the DNA on his male germ cells that was affecting his fertility. So the conception was not going to happen even if you did it like in a petri dish, because it was affecting his DNA. So that's why the spirits needed to do all this work in order for this reincarnation to be able to happen. So there is a lot more work in the behind of the scenes than we think of, huh? So then this connection with the parents, we're going through some time. It wasn't only that one night. The spirit that was trying to reincarnate had tried already on his own. That's why he looked so defeated in that first picture that we saw. He was frustrated because it was for a while that he was doing that. And why? Because they needed this fluidic connection to happen. And this connection was going to happen over time so that the reincarnating spirit would start this transition process from the spiritual plane to the material plane. So slowly he would start losing his contact with the spiritual sphere. So that sounds very reasonable, because imagine that, time of conception, you are a spirit in the spiritual realm, now you attach to the body. So it doesn't happen like that abruptly. It's something that happens in slow process for this connection to happen. And it's necessary so that the peri-spiritual body can regain its plasticity in order to enter life in the flesh. Because you see his spiritual body now was in the form of an adult, right? And he's going to need to be in a different form in order to connect with the body that's developing. All right, so we had the connection with the parents. Now there's a need for a deeper connection with the mother. It's a very spiritual connection with the mother. And it's a very important step in this process. So another day, other friendly spirits come there, and those are specialized spiritist workers. They're called constructor spirits. And they're going to go to their home in order to work on the reincarnating perispirit's body, magnetizing it so we can achieve this new form. So you can see that he's like shrinking to a child's form. And you can see some, like, again, semi-material forms that are coming off so he can achieve that size through this magnetic influx from the constructor spirits. And as this happens, they say that the mental clarity of the reincarnating spirits starts to decrease. And the degree that that happens also is in accordance to the level of evolution of the spirit. So some spirits, they need to be in like a sleep state when that happens. So they will help them fall asleep. And they're only going to regain their full faculties during adolescence in the new life. And other spirits that are able to stay a little bit more aware of what's going on during the whole process. So once they change his perispiritual form, all the good spirits gather together so this perispiritual connection can happen with the mother. The mother in this case, she was already very acceptive. She was accepting very well the child. So she chose to be on her knee to receive his perispiritual form. A prayer was said, it was very beautiful. They had over 100 friends there. So people say, we are alone when we are born and we are alone when we die. We are not alone even before we are born. Look, 100 friends are there. And it was a very beautiful and moving scene. Those flowers that we can see there that are coming down was actually superior spirits that even André Luiz could not see them. And he could see them in this form of this crown of flowers that were coming to bless this mom. So it was very beautiful. So now we have the family. So now we have their names. So the mom is called Raquel, the baby is called Segismundo, and the father is called Adelino. And I think this passage is very beautiful because they describe this moment of connection. So once she accepted the perispiritual form of the reincarnating spirit, they say that she pressed it so close and strongly and lovingly to her heart that he connected to her like a flower to a stem. So there is actually a connection perispirit to perispirit. And the one who would be flesh of her flesh was from now on soul of her soul. So we can see how this step is very important. Because if this perispiritual connection doesn't happen, or if it's not strong enough, you can have problems in this reincarnation process. Okay, so now it comes time for conception. Wow, we've been talking a lot, and conception didn't even help yet, and didn't even happen yet, right? So all this work that's done before conception even happened. So the pictures are not in chronological order because you can see him here still in his grown-up form. But what we wanted to bring attention to is that the good spirits that are responsible for the conception happening and the spiritual guidance, they have that plan with them. That plan that talks about the genetic material that's going to be needed in order for a body to be formed in accordance with what it needs, the tools it will need to perform its tasks in the reincarnation. Why is so important that they choose wisely genetic material? Because once the genetic materials meet, the development of the embryo will happen according to the physical laws, to the laws of nature, right? So their work needs to be done before that. But there is also elements from the spiritual plane that coexist with those laws in accordance with evolutionary or redemptive plans. So André Luiz was asking the good spirits, like, okay, are we all going to be there in the moment of conception? Do you think that everybody will be there? And then they said, no, it's not necessary for us to be there at the moment of the couple's union. Such moments are sublime and inviolable. But there is a good but. in well-founded homes. So we might be not alone if we are not in an environment that's a loving environment where the reason why we are having this intimate moment is a sublime moment. If it's just a frivolous reason, we might not be alone. We might be accompanied by many spirits and not the good spirits that were there before that were helping you. So we need to be careful with that. And then they also explained to André Luiz, because he was a physician on Earth, right? He should know better than ask that question, because they said, you know, the fertilization only happens a few hours after the encounter, so we do have time to work on it. We don't need to be right there. So then after, when the couple was asleep, the good spirits come to do their work. So the spirit that was his task was to make sure the right genetic material was chosen. He examined very well the chromosomal disposition of all the male germ cells as he presided over the work of determining the sex of the body that would form. And also he had to study the maternal egg. But the maternal egg usually is only one option that you get. So it's very important that he would choose the correct male cell that together would form the genetic material necessary. So he, after carefully studying it, he identifies the male cell that is most suitable and fix magnetic powers on it, helping it overcome the competitors. So we always thought that was random, right? It's whatever cell that's the strongest and the quickest that will get there, but it's not. It's chosen purposefully. And even material science has seen that. There was a study in 2017 done by Dr. Nadeau. He's a geneticist. He did in mice that they changed the genetic material of the male. And when they saw the offsprings, that expression of the defective gene from the male did not show up in the offsprings according to Mendel's law. It was actually a much lesser frequency. And then they came with this hypothesis that there was a communication from the egg to the male germ cells that would attract the best male cells to form the healthiest offsprings. So even earth science is getting into that. So then they chose the male cell for the conception, and then both forces, male and female, now formed one whole, turning into a very strenuous focus of light. And we also know from biology that there is a spark of the light at the moment of fertilization in the egg. And they say, over that microscopic globe of light, latent life began to stir. So then that embryo is going to develop, right? So they say that anatomic details and contours take shape in accordance with the law of heredity. So always keeping in that the laws of nature are followed. But, and then depends on the father's and the mother's chromosomes. However, to this you must add. So that embryo development will depend on the chromosomes, but also in the spiritual aspects. So one very important one is the mother's mental modes. So the mother thought pattern can affect, positively or negative, the development of that embryo. So if the mother is not accepting of that pregnancy, if it's really sending negative thoughts, that pregnancy can fail. The other one is the spirit's own actions. So the spirit that's reincarnating also has influence on that embryo development. So we saw how Sigismundo was kind of frustrated with the situation that he was going on, right? That the father was not accepting of him. And then as the construction spirits were working on him, he was having doubts. He was like, you know, I have done so much work in the spiritual realm. What's going to happen with all the people that count on me in the spiritual realm to do this work? He was really having doubts. But because he had all that support from the good spirits, they came and told him, don't worry, you know, we'll take care of it. You can do it. See how your father is already accepting you. And he changed his mind and went happily to his reincarnation. But how about if a spirit that doesn't have the merit of receiving this support from the good spirits? The spirit might say, you know, I really don't want to go through this incarnation right now. I want to stop this process. And then the pregnancy can fail. The other one is the assistance of the constructor spirits. So the spirits that worked really hard in choosing that genetic material, in magnetizing his body, and we're going to keep seeing their work during the gestation period. If the environment that the mother is in, her own mental modes, and the spirit company that she keeps, it's not favorable, the constructor spirits cannot do their work how they're supposed to. So this chapter in the book is about Sigismundo reincarnation. We have chapter 15. It's about a failure of a reincarnation, and the construction spirits really talk about the difficulties they were having to help that pregnancy. And then the spirit friends who visit frequently. I put it separate, but sometimes they are all happening at the same time. I think most of the time, right? They're all happening at the same time. So we saw the physical contribution for this embryo development, the spiritual contributions. And we can see how a pregnancy can fail in both sides. And that leads to a miscarriage. And I don't think the spirits bring this knowledge to us so we can try to figure out why it happened to our friend, to a family member, to a person we know from the center. Why did they lose their baby, for example? We might never know. Sometimes in earth science, they don't know why miscarriage happened, and you just tell, let's try to improve your diet, let's make sure you have all the supplements that you need. And it's the same thing. They bring to us those examples so we can improve ourselves in those points in order to have a better effort next time. So it's not just for curiosity and to, wonder why it happened to someone. So let's see what the spirits books say about conception. Allan Kardec asked the spirits, when does the spirit unite with the body? And then they answer, the union begins at conception, and it only completes with birth. From the moment of conception, the spirit assigned to that body is united by the perispirit, which brings spirit and body closer and closer as the moment of birth approaches. So it starts at conception. There is that connection right there. All right. So now we're going to have the fetal development under the spiritual guidance. And how does it happen? So we go back to our friend's house. And the construction spirits are there. And since the moment that the conception happened, they seal the mother's bedroom magnetically to not have any interference from any negatively motivated spirits on their work. So delicate that work is. And we can see the merit of all the spirits involved there to receive that support. And the construction workers there, they work in that new body, cell by cell, in keeping with the plan. And sometimes, during the first stages of the formation of the most important organs, they stop to pray, pleading Jesus' blessing for the work at hand, and a sparkling light would come down from above, pouring over the bedroom, encouraging their action. So it's very delicate and important work. And the most important period of time was the first 21 days, because in those first 21 days, the embryo would reach its basic configuration. And not only they sealed the room so the other spirits couldn't come in to visit her, even family members tried to come in and they were like, I'm sorry, not right now. But she couldn't leave either. So even during her sleep, she couldn't go beyond her bedroom to stay close to them. And then on the 21st night, they opened the magnetic door to her bedroom and she was open to visitation. And who was going to visit her? Not only her friends, like her family members, the father's friends and family members, and the reincarnating spirits' friends, right? Because a lot of people were excited about what was happening. And then André Luiz, he tries to explain the work of the constructor spirits with the process of materialization, right? Materialization is, for example, what happened to Jesus during the resurrection. He didn't have a new physical body. He had a different body, a materialized body that we could see. So that's the comparison that André Luiz uses. So the technicians, they work on behalf of the reincarnating spirit, and they rely on the help for the mother. And the mother, in this case, she functions as the medium that helps give what is needed for the materialization process, right? But her work is influenced by the magnetic resources from the father. So it needs to be direct and positive help from the father, like the supporting mediums can influence the process of materialization. So we saw how important it was the fathers in the beginning and now during gestation too. Of course, without the mother collaboration is much harder, but there is a very important aspect from the father as well. It will, and André Luiz tells us that it would be impossible to describe the caring details involved in the construction of the incarnating spirit's new body. And this chapter is called Watch and Care, and I think it's a very purposeful topic because they were watching over her and caring for her to make sure that that process would happen the best way possible. So then once she's able to leave her room, she goes out in nature with her friends and the friends of the incarnating spirits. And the very interesting thing is that they were collecting elements from nature to give to her to strengthen her spirit and the physical characteristics for the health of her baby that was developing. So she was very relieved and happy after those 21 days. And the spirit was too. The incarnating spirit was very relieved too. We can see, we get nervous as parents on earth when you find out there is a pregnancy because you're worried about what might happen. So they were relieved and in their spirit, and I'm sure on earth too. The very delicate threads that linked the incarnate to their bodies also held him to his fetus. So Sigismund, the spirit, could not go far from her because he was connected to the baby that was developing. So she would walk around, we can see there carrying him. He could not leave his mother's company. So they would gather every night in this gathering of hope and happiness, and it was a demonstration of fraternal care, devotion, and tenderness. And they say that the souls of devoted mothers, they cross great distance in search of loving elements for the formation of the nest of flesh into which a beloved child must be reborn. So that's why they were looking for the elements in nature. All right, so in their case, the fetal organization continued normally because the couple had honorable habits. So see, even with all the support from the constructor spirits, there is also responsibility on the parents to have honorable habits. So healthy diet, don't abuse alcohol and drugs, and not smoking cigarettes. That will make the work of the construction spirits much harder. And it can affect the development of the fetus. And it says, the fetal development compelled the mother to make true organic sacrifices. So not only spiritual, but organic sacrifices. And each night, they would still receive this visit from the spiritual plane. Rare were the night in which spirits who were thankful to the incarnating spirit, so Sigismundo said he did a lot of work in the spiritual realm, and he had lots of spirits that were thankful for him for the work that he did. And they would come visit him, but they were not only coming to visit him to bring positive vibrations to him, they would bring to the mother and the father as well. All right, so now the perispirit, the gestation is coming to the end, it's coming about time for birth. Let's see what the Spirit's book says about it. So in question 352, at the moment of birth, does the spirit have all its faculties intact? So does this process of reincarnation finishes once the baby is born, right? All the faculties come back. And they answer no. They return gradually with the growth of the body's organs. Life in a body is a new experience for the spirit, and it has to learn how to use all this new body's instrument, which makes sense, right? Imagine a newborn baby being able to think like we think now. That would not make sense, right? Because the body doesn't have the ability to express that. But with the maturing of the faculties, the spirit's ideas come back little by little. All right, so let's see what happened in the case of our friends. She had all this help from the spiritual realm, huh? I bet her birth was very easy and she just had the baby very easily. Huh? What do you think? So they come back on the evening before the birth because they wanted to be there to help her at birth time. But look what happened. After prolonged efforts, the incarnate spirit was reborn. So even with all that spiritual support, she still had to do the hard work to get the baby to be born. So it happens to all of us. So then, after all this, the good spirits are very happy and they say, the initial work of reincarnation was ready. It's just beginning. And we've been talking here for how long? And they say the full work with the complete integration of the incarnating spirits into the physical elements will only take place in 7 years. So let's see what the Spirit's book says about it. So Kardec asks, why must the spirit go through infancy? Right? Because if they can't exercise their faculties, why should a spirit go through the spirit in life? And the Spirit's answer, the purpose of incarnation is to improve the spirit. So it's not a punishment that you're not able to express all your faculties. There is a purpose for it, and this is going to help you improve. Why? Because when you don't have use of all your faculties, you more easily pliable, right? You can receive the information to help you change. So the impressions that the child receives more easily will mold its personality and therefore promote its progress. So it's not a punishment, it's an opportunity to improve ourselves. So to that end, everyone entrusted with the education of a child should contribute. So everyone, not just the mother and the father, it can be a teacher, it can be a friend, it can be us here in the Spirit Center that receive the children that come for the evangelization. So everyone has a responsibility to play. And then Allan Kardec asks, why does the character of young people change? Right? As they grow, you start seeing some changes, especially as they go through adolescence. Is it the spirit that changes? And they answer, oops. They say, no, the spirit doesn't change. The spirit regains the self-awareness. So they start to become who they were before. So that's when you start seeing the tendencies and the qualities that they brought from the previous life. So that makes it very important, again, the childhood, right? Because the tender nature of the young ones makes them more pliable, more moldable, more open to the advice of those that want to help them progress. This way, any tendency toward wrongdoing are redirected, and faulty characters can be gradually reformed. So again, the importance of this part of the reincarnation. That's why it doesn't finish when the baby is born, because that would be, how would that spirit change if it's just a child, that already knows everything from previous life? And so it needs to make sense. It needs to be a period of time that you're going to be able to grow and to be more accepting to change. So then they say, God entrusts this moral modeling to the parents as a duty, as a sacred mission of which they will have to give solemn account. So as we go through this whole process of the reincarnation process and pregnancy, we can see how many people are involved in it, how much help we receive. And then this brings us some comfort when we think about our lives. Sometimes we might be going through a hard time. Sometimes we might be feeling alone. And we can see that even if we're going through a hard time, we're not alone. And it didn't happen as a chance or just to punish us. There is a purpose and opportunity for us to grow. And there is a lot of people that are cheering us, even though sometimes we might not know they're there. So with that, I wanted to finish with this sentence that says, God bless our incarnation and all those who lovingly contribute to it. Thank you.
Leticia, thank you so much for all this information. I wish that you had actually brought this message 2 weeks ago, because last week we were talking about the same case very superficially. We didn't go in detail as you did, but it was an amazing illustration what we mentioned last week with one of our talks about the preparation, the before, the during, right, and the after, what happened. So thank you. It came on the right time. It would be nice if it was before, but it came on the right time. We can always go back and rewatch the other one after this one, so it makes a little bit more sense.
Because I've read this case many times, right? And then every time you read it, you start to see how much more information it gives you. Or I don't know if you start paying attention to different things.
Yes.
But as I saw it, the details in the genetic explanation, and the medical part of it, I was amazed.
And this is what I would like to open up for everyone to ask a question or make a comment, but I will make my question before that. Okay? I usually let everyone, but one of the interesting point that you brought, and I think you focus a whole lot, was on the connection point. Not so much only on the connection. At least I haven't seen it yet. When I read this case about Segismundo, that the cells also follow this connection, as you mentioned, right? And you mentioned the study as well, the scientific study that has been done. I forget the name of the doctor that you mentioned, but I would like to actually ask you if you can elaborate more during the studies of how much more we are connected. And taken to the father side, not only with the mother, how much more of connections we can explore in the sense of, because we know the connections there, explore during the infancy, as well as we develop with our parents, as well as if we are parents, on how we can also recollect some of the things that perhaps we thought it was subtle and it was just, it's by chance that this child think of me this way, or we feel this way for one another, and that passes as the development of the mind and the heart goes on, and we forget. But then later on, if we were able to rescue, would that make a change? Can that help? Since we know that there is a connection. So I don't know if you understood my question. It was back and forth.
Yeah.
But to me is mind opening again. Again, we've read this case several times, but every time we hear, we talk about it, it's like, oh, I never thought about that. So can this connection help in the future as an adult life, for example, between those two spirits who were reincarnated together?
I believe so. So I think this knowledge is so important because it brings to us the role we all play, right? So instead of going through it just like by chance, right? Just thinking about the material science and it will happen because of the genetic material, to do it purposefully. So when we are planning on conceiving a child, this preparation before, during, and after is very important to establish this connection, not only for the physical development of that embryo, but to develop this relationship with that spirit that's reincarnating. Some exercises you can do, they say, before you are going to get together to try to conceive a baby, you pray to attract those good spirits that are going to be there to help you, right? To maintain that environment with elevated vibrations. As you get pregnant, even if you are worried or feeling sick or tired, but try to always cultivate positive thought patterns so you can purposefully aid in the development of that child. I didn't read further in how it affects the relationship as the child grows, but I can only infer from all these teachings that will make this connection a better connection, a communication even, and acceptance of affinity stronger between the spirits. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, it's important. And I think that just to touch up again, that you brought this element during the talk as well, of all the help that we get. This help is not only sitting there after we reincarnate, right? It also helps. So thank you. That's a great reminder, because we tend to look at the difficulties aspect of life, and we forget all of the joy that is vibrating for all of us on the other side. So thank you, yes.
And one thing that I forgot to mention is that as the spirit continue going through the incarnation process, all those good spirits don't leave and say, now you're on your own. Right. We have at least one spirit that stays with us, our mentor spirit, that's always by our side, and then all the familiar spirits and the friendly spirits. So, like you said, all that help.
Right. Anyone else would like to ask a question or comment? Alba.
Thank you, Leticia. What a wonderful talk. I have so many questions, but don't worry, I wanna ask all of them. I have a comment and two questions, if everybody don't mind. My first comment is about how precious our physical body is, and how, at least in this side of the world, our culture is kind of against the body, because we are very centered in the physical appearance, but not the function of the body. And I wish we could create a banner and send in social media, or I don't know, especially to all these young minds that are suffering, and they don't know that they have a beautiful body, and they are currently undergoing mental health issues, anorexia and
it's
depression.
Our precious gift, right? That
Yeah,
we
and
get in this
it is amazing. It is like, oh my God, I'm truly a miracle. I don't have words to express that. My question, the first one is, it's a lot of planning, and I imagine there are hundreds of thousands of spirits in these departments of reincarnation. I assuming there are so many around the planet.
Each colony, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, this Sigismundo case is kind of an ideal case, but what happened with these casual, intimate relations, like a one night only, and the lady got pregnant, and she doesn't know who's the father, and she doesn't want her to know who's. It's like what is going on in the spirit realm? I don't know if in the books, in the literature, you read something about it. Is the same the planning, or what is it?
So the chapter 15, after the Segismundo's case, they talk about a case that's similar to that. So the construction spirits are there to help. So we always receive help from the good spirits. They never leave us without help. But the amount of help they're able to give us will depend on our merit and our own contribution. So the case that's on chapter 15, the mother, they had been coming to help her for 6 months. So they were able to help that baby continue to develop for 6 months. But she was very rebellious against it. She wanted to party and go out and drink. And she didn't know that drinking was bad for the baby. And the spirits that were around her did not want her to have a baby. Because if she had the baby, she was not going to go party anymore. And they wanted her to keep going party. So it's not even that they were against the spirit that was going to be born. It was not something personal against that spirit. They didn't want her to change. And then when Andrea Luiz is able to examine that fetus inside of her, they see the negative mental forms floating in her amniotic fluid and attacking her placenta. And the placenta is what gives life to the baby, brings the oxygen and the nutrients. And they were like, we tried so hard, but she hasn't changed her ways. So she hasn't changed the company that she's keeping. And we are going to fail in our work. And that pregnancy failed at 6 months. So they will try to help us, but it will depend on us to be accepting of that help, to facilitate it or to make it more difficult to the good spirits. And then they always say they will try their best, but if we distance ourselves from them, they will also distance themselves from us, just because it's a lot of work that's going with no result. To her free will. Yeah.
Thank you. And another question in relation to the connection with the parents. I can infer by the information that you gave us that, for instance, there is spirit who's in the reincarnatory plan, they don't supposed to live with their biological parents. The reincarnatory plan is to be adopted. So I can infer that maybe the future adopting parents are being part of this connection in the spirit realm?
I believe so, because a lot of times you see that there is the similarity between the child and the adoptive parents more than even their biological parents. So I didn't read that in the book or in the... I think there is a part about adoption in the Spirit's book, but I don't remember reading that. But because nothing happens by chance, right? I'm sure that was in their reincarnatory plan, and there was some work done with the future parents for their child.
Daniel. Okay. Paula, please.
Thank you. Excellent and applicable to everyone because we've all reincarnated. I just was thinking that the first time I heard about the importance of the father was when I was in my 30s and I had met the Sikhs, which is a religious group from Amritsar in northern India. They were saying that the father should watch their diet even prior to conception. So I liked it because it wasn't just all on the mother. The father had to clean up the diet and have the good thoughts, etc. And then this was the part I was just wondering if there was another correspondence. After birth, they really wanted the mother and the baby to bond for like 6 weeks. So she was really cared for, attended to. The father was kind of in reserve, but really keeping a very loving environment. And then I think about Western culture, where people are going back to work, I would consider too soon. Just your comment.
Yeah, in the book by Dr. Christiane Assis, she says the importance of all that from the period of time after birth for the mother. And it's not just the mother and the father and the family, right? Because it's not just the spiritual aspects. There is the physical aspect, right? It's a change in the family's routine. Taking care of a newborn is not easy. It's a challenge on everybody, and you get tired and sleep deprived. And so she talks about the importance of understanding that period of time and providing the support needed for the mother, the father. And I do believe that there is an extra challenge in our culture nowadays when they think that a mom should go back to work like 2 weeks after her baby's born, and how this will affect the development of their child and this bonding experience, right, with the family. I'm sure it makes it more challenging than easy, like if you have the time to actually bond and adapt to this new reality in your family.
Anyone else? Yasko.
Thank you so much for this. Every time we read the Sigismundo's reincarnatory process, we get amazed. So I was wondering, if they have to control the father, the mother, and the incarnating spirit, how about the twins? When it comes to the two spirits, either, because of the split egg, a real twins or a fraternal twin, doesn't matter. But, oh my God, how many parameters, how many aspects, especially the side of the spirit, because we always tend here to look at the physical part, if it's going to share that environment, that placenta or not placenta, the nutrition, we all about that. But my God, the part of the spirit is so much more, not complex, let's say, not complicated, but complex. How did you have somewhere this description, this double team, triple team work in this coordination,
I didn't read that in the book, but I can only think about how that collaboration must be needed, right? Especially two or three spirits that are going to go through that process at the same time. And they say many times that the twins, there are spirits that have lots of affinity to be able to come together. But it's just, and we can think of other people, right? Because you can have other people living in your home. So it might be not just the couple, but how about if you live with your mother or mother-in-law, and it all plays a role in that environment. So we brought like a case that was straightforward, but in life we have cases that vary in all different directions, and we have an idea of the way it happens and how complex it already is when it's kind of straightforward. Imagine when we have lots of differences, because sometimes we might be fine with the husband and fine with the spirit, but if you live with a person that's giving you a hard time and making your home environment not harmonious, that's going to be needed to be worked on too.
Thank you, Leticia.
welcome.
Beautiful talk. And thank you so much for bringing this case of Sigismundo. So we studied this book here probably a couple of years ago. And as you said, there is a lot of detail in this chapter. One of the things, I don't remember, so since it's appropriate that you're talking about the case, so I will ask you, we mentioned about the time that the spirit has to acclimate with the biological parent. So I don't remember in this chapter if they mention like 6 months before, 1 year before. So this approximation between the spirits that will reincarnate with the parent, for example, for people that wanted to get pregnant. So how long before, we need to be prepared, do the suggestion that you brought to us? Do you have any of this information? If it is like 6 months, couple months ago.
I don't have the number. I remember that they said it was happening for quite some time. That's when I brought that.
Yes.
And that's after that period of time that Sigismundo was trying on his own, that then he received the support from the... other spirits.
And just a comment on that. So, for example, we just have, a son a year and a half ago, and I remember, even 4 years before, I started to have dream with him. 4 years, 5 years before. And my wife and I, we are talking about, I said, look, I've seen this little boy here in the bed, in our bed. It was a dream, comes as a dream. And we learned through the Spiritist literature that there is this acceptance from the biological father during the emancipation of the spirit. We have cases for example, in the memoir of a suicide, there is a case that a couple didn't accept. They went to the meeting with the spirit. And so I don't know if both of them or one of them did not accept to receive that spirit that has committed suicide in previous reincarnation. And the mentor didn't enforce that because of free will. Mm. So for my experience, I think 5 years I was already contemplating or see the presence of this spirit in my life.
And that's what we see. They give us time, right? They don't force upon us. They give us time and let us exercise our free will. So they will support us and guide us, but in the end, it's up to us.
Final comment?
This is quick because when Daniel was speaking, it reminded me of what I learned as a play therapist. In one or two of the children I work with, it seemed that, I think it was usually the father, I'm not saying names, so I feel free to share this, did not accept the sex of the child. So that was an issue that had to be worked out in play therapy.
Yes, it's something that can happen. She mentions in her book too, accepting the sex of the child. Sometimes they accept that spirit to come, but it didn't come as they expected, and then it's something that you need to work on once the child is already born.
Leticia, would like to thank you again for your hard work, bringing this amazing story back to life in our lives, and teaching us this process, the before, the during, and the after. I like to say, and I say this to my kids, that once you are a parent, you're always going to be a parent, no matter how old they are. And many of the parents here can relate to this idea, right? And we know that we both learn, right? We learn, and they learn from us, and we learn from them as well. So it's a process of life, process of redirect our minds and learning how to respect, learn how to grow together. So I think that's the outcome of the whole thing. What I would like to do, I'll pass the word to Kirsten for her to conduct a visualization. But during the visualization, let us take this to heart. And when we see a mother, when we see a mother-to-be, a father, the struggles of life that we see, let's pray. Because perhaps we have been through this and we don't know. So it's nice that we send our vibrations. It's nice that we send our hearts to these moments. Or when we see a child smiling as well. When we see one another smiling. Because we went through all of this. So we should really tap ourselves in the back and say, good job, right? We're here. We're striving to be a better individual. Because as we do well, not only individually but collectively, we have tons of helpers from the other side who are clapping for us, who are cheering for us. So let us connect with our, these higher beings that are praying for us as well. And the only way we can do is by thinking, really, exercising, right? We saw two interesting messages before we start today about indulgence, right? And sometimes we think it's by heart. And we saw another one that Joanna de Angelis tells us that we will suffer, right? People can help us, but we'll have to go through, endure. But also we'll have happy moments that we should also take to heart and do the best to contemplate them. So that's our call to action, if we can say it that way. Thanking again this amazing moment. And I'll pass the word to Kirsten, please.
Would you mind getting the light? Thank you. We're going to be playing some soft music.